Peace and love. Welcome back. I'm bundled up today because at least across all of Canada, if not all of North America, I'm pretty sure it's sub-zero temperatures, so we gotta do what we gotta do. Excuse the delay in production. I've been sick this last week, so I had to sit down, but I'm back better than ever. So, are you judging me? I had a gentleman come to the door 2 weeks ago. He was a witness, and we got talking about judgment. And for me, as a person who walked away from being a witness or being part of that organization, walked away from organized religion in general, and I know when I listen to a lot of other people who have walked away from mainstream religion, whatever that may be, whether it's being a witness or a Christian or a Mormon or a Catholic or whatever, but you walked away. We often say the reason, or one of the reasons that we left, is because we felt like it was an overly judgmental environment that lacked unconditional love. So, I was talking about this with this gentleman, with this witness that came to the door, and he basically gave a response that I've heard a million times, that, well, the Bible is a conditional book, and in the Bible, God showed conditional love. And then if you don't want to follow the rules of the Bible, then, you're not going to make it to the end, or you're not going to make it to the paradise, or a Christian might say, you're going to go to hell, whatever. So, as I talk about this, I think it's important to mention that, I appreciate the Bible, and I think there's a lot to be gained from the Bible. However, I'm talking about this just from a common sense approach, a functional life approach. Because there's a scripture to justify everything and anything. Any idea or opinion you have, there's a scripture that you can find in the Bible that's going to work with your ideas and opinions. So I'm not really talking about this from a Bible perspective. I'm talking about this from a life perspective. So when we look at this idea of judgment and conditional love, those of us who walked away from those communities where we felt like that was unconditional love was non-existent, what do we mean when we say we want to live a life where there's unconditional love and no judgment? Does that mean that we just want to live willy-nilly, or we just want to have a free-for-all with our lives and just break all the rules and party and whatever? Because oftentimes that's the idea that's put forth, that those of us who walk away just want to have a good time. And really, that's not true. For me, when I talk about not judging other people or not being involved in a community where I'm being judged, that has nothing to do with not using discernment. You see, because those of us who say, oh, we don't want to judge others, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not going to use discernment and judgment when it comes to other people's behaviors. You see, I may identify that an individual, whoever they are, maybe even a family member, has behaviors that are dangerous and detrimental to me and my family and my well-being. And so, you know what? I'm going to make a judgment call, and I may choose to turn away from that person. However, that does not mean that I'm judging that person. I'm judging that person's behavior. And it's important that we judge behavior. But there's a difference. And this is where we get lost when we talk about religion. Because within religion, it's not just people's behaviors. Maybe to some degree it is, but oftentimes it's the person themselves that becomes judged or labeled or slandered. And so when we talk about unconditional love, we don't see it. The love is very conditional. And just like that gentleman who came to my door, just like his argument that he tried to pose that, oh, well, the Bible's conditional, the people who are in charge within these various religions, they play on this conditional nature of the Bible, and they add to it, and they add their own little conditions and their own ideas, and it becomes a very uncomfortable environment. You may find yourself walking into a church or a kingdom hall or an auditorium of some sort of religion, and you see everybody kind of looking everybody else up and down. Now just imagine this. Imagine a spiritual environment where instead of looking at everybody else, we're looking at ourselves. Where everybody wakes up in the morning and is concerned about judging themselves and not other people, and not, oh, this person has tight pants on, or this lady, they can see a little bit too much of her breasts, or whatever it may be. I went to a church about, I don't know, maybe 2.5 years ago, and for most of my spiritual experience, it's just happened with the witnesses, with the Jehovah's Witnesses of Going to Kingdom Hall. So this was a chance for me to sort of see a different side of Christianity or spirituality. And the pastor, or the reverend, whatever you want to call him, he got into this sermon about women. And I thought, you know what? He starts going on about women and about how the girls, they need to be mindful of how they dress, and the skirts can't be too short, and this, that, and the third. And I thought, damn, I've heard this one 1,000 times before. And as much as I think that women, because I have a daughter of my own, and I think that women should be conscious and aware of how they present themselves. The churches, for so long, have been bringing women down by just harping on how they look and how they're supposed to act and this and that and the third. And all the while, not one time in my life have I ever heard a pastor or an elder or a preacher stand there and talk about what kind of queens women are and how everything we have is the product of women and how important women are to our lives. And could you imagine if in these churches and in these congregations and communities, instead of breaking women down, they built women up? Instead of the sermon being about, oh, women don't wear short skirts, the sermon was about, hey, woman, you're a queen. Could you imagine what that would do to the value that many of these women have for themselves? Instead of looking at themselves like an object that needs to be aware of what kind of decorations I'm putting on myself, they look at themselves for the queen they are. But that's non-existent in these religions. It's non-existent. And it builds a self-defeating environment. And so for those of us who walked away and say that we want to live in unconditional love, and we don't want to be part of an environment where we're living in judgment, no, that does not mean that we do not want to use discernment. It doesn't mean that we're not going to use careful judgment and picking our associates and making choices in life, making healthy choices. It means that we're not going to get tied up in labeling and shunning and looking down on other people. But instead, we look at our spirituality from the inside out and not the outside in. And it's funny because one of the best examples of unconditional love you can find is in the Bible. When you talk about the story of the prodigal son, here's a person who went wayward, leaves his father's home, leaves his beliefs, he's off up to God knows what, nothing good, and then he decides to come back. And when he comes back, is he shunned? Is he labeled? Is he slandered? Is he looked down on? No. He's welcomed back with open arms. And actually, the other son, who starts judging him, is the one who's looked down on. Because he's sitting here looking at behaviors. He's sitting here looking at how people act. And he's putting a judgment of who that person is based on their behaviors. And the whole concept of the story is that although this person made some bad choices with their behavior and their lifestyle, we're still not going to judge the person, you see. And so this is what we talk about when we say we want to be in an environment of non-judgment and unconditional love. It does not mean that we just want to live willy-nilly. It does not mean that we don't have principles or values or make strong judgment calls when it comes to our associates or behavior of other people or the behavior of ourselves. It just means that we don't want to get tied up in this finger-pointing and labeling situation that you see where, oh, this person did this, that, and the third. Well, they're worldly. Right? So, hopefully it's some food for thought for everybody today. I look forward to a time when spirituality becomes something that's more from the inside out and not so much dictated to us from the outside in. But all we can do is work for peace. So welcome back. There's going to be plenty of awesome, hard-hitting content coming around the corner. Stay tuned, like, subscribe. I'm out. Peace.